Welcome to episode 23 of Rubbish Talk with myself, Alistair Meldrum.
And myself, Jane Bond.
You're back, Jane.
I know.
You'd abandoned me for a few weeks.
Well, you've just kept me so busy, Alistair, with all these projects and things to do, you're making money for the,
We've got to try our best, haven't we? We've got to try our best. So welcome back. And today we have our guest for today is Colin Forshaw, who is the production and operations manager for SUEZ in Aberdeen. So that links quite nicely to the podcast we did with Pam Walker from Aberdeen City Council a fortnight ago. So more about Colin shortly, but as usual, there's lots happening at the moment in terms of waste management, particularly between Zero Waste Scotland and DEFRA.
Yeah, and we could talk for ages about this, but we're going to try and keep it short and succinct. So Zero Waste Scotland has recently published their report on the composition of household waste collected at the curbside in Scotland. So we and a number of other companies did a lot of waste composition analysis for a lot of the local authorities, trying to find out what's been thrown away and all that kind of stuff, and what's recycling, how much is collected, what's thrown away, and fundamentally what is in that bin, what is in the residual bin that could actually be put in the recycling, or even the food waste bin. So it is quite interesting. I find it quite interesting. And basically they're saying that there is, I think it was 52% or 52% of what's in the bin shouldn't be in the bin, which I think is we think it's a bit on the low side, don't we, Alistair? We think perhaps it's, but even then, I mean, 50% of what you put in your bin shouldn't be there in the first place is quite with saying that. Most commonly occurring waste types, food waste, and again, we've been on a rant about food waste, haven't we? The fact that food waste should go in your food waste bin. The majority of people in Scotland are provided with a food waste bin, and in most cases it's collected weekly. So food waste, paper and cardboard, again, paper and cardboard, we've got a bin for that. I'm sure everybody's got a bin for that. Plastic films and flexibles, that's a kind of plastic film is not collected in most places, but we've got our dense plastics, again, or plastics which should actually be put in there. So, again, it's trying to make sure we put the right things in the right bins. Which
I think it's I think it's good that Zero Waste Scotland has finally come out with this figure, because I think it's to a certain extent is acknowledging that the recycling system is not working to the optimum, and we maybe need to sort of refocus why that is, and ultimately, if we're not going to make the public responsible for actually using the system properly, it's never going to work. We did talk last episode. We did talk about this, and I did do a blog post on the Rubbish Talk website about the financial savings that are possible there. I did use a higher figure in terms of waste percentage. It was in the wrong bin, but even taking 50%, there's still significant savings to be had, and there's also significant benefits in terms of carbon emissions and the environment. So interesting stuff. We'll share the link if people haven't seen it. We'll share the link to the post that Zero Waste Scotland put up. But the big news is with the UK government. DEFRA last week, I think it was, came out with their views on simpler recycling collections. And this goes back to Rishi Sunak and we can't have 7 bins at households. And as we've spoken about, I've had 7 bins at my household for a long time now and managed perfectly well with them. But it's interesting. So really what they're saying is each council needs to provide a residual waste service, a mixed recycling service, and a food waste collection. And then there's a few choices about garden waste, compostable waste. But so in a sense, it's good that they've come out and they're trying to be consistent about that across the whole UK. I see, there's issues there, because when you're talking about commingled collection, they're talking about glass, plastics, paper, all that mixed together. So there's then a huge, have we actually got the capacity within the recycling infrastructure to recover that material, to segregate it? Are we going to get the right standard? And one of the things they've got in there that is a little bit of a surprise is the councils must provide a fortnightly residual waste collection as a minimum. So they're actually trying to encourage them to stay weekly. And if you think about it, if you take the food out and if you take the recycle out, you don't need a residual waste collection every fortnight. You can manage 3 or 4 weeks. And the wording around that's a bit strange, because it's talking about, to get the odorous waste out. Generally, the odorous waste and residual waste is the food waste. So if you take that out, then what's in the residual isn't particularly odorous at all. So interesting stuff. I think the other interesting bit is come out from DEFRA, and it will apply in Scotland in some shape or form as well, and Northern Ireland and Wales. So it's quite interesting how that's going to integrate with the work we've been doing in Scotland, what Natural Resources in Wales have been doing, and what they've been doing in Northern Ireland. So I think there's a little bit more reading. I've not read it in full. I've only read the sort of headlines. So I think I'm actually just waiting for Simon Glenn, one of our previous guests, to give a good summary. I'm sure it'll come out shortly, but if we do see one, we'll make sure we share it. And if you're listening, Simon, and you've not done your summary, then it's about time you did.
Yeah, a good rant in there, Simon. I think the thing with it is 3 bins is, I mean, only 1 bin for commingled recycling, and putting glass into that as well. I mean, the actual separation of that is going to be could be quite difficult. I mean, you're contaminating your paper with your glass, and that's always been a thing where we've moved towards separating glass from fibres. So it's kind of seems to be going backwards in a way.
By making it simpler, they're effectively accepting that they're going to have poorer quality product. So they're going to have poorer quality recycled paper, poorer quality glass, and so on. And and that it makes it harder to then recover these materials. But it is interesting that I do like the fact that they've sort of nailed their colours to the mast a little bit and said, like, this is what we're going to do. So I do like that bit of it, but I think I get the sense that it was maybe rushed out a little bit and maybe not quite thought through as well as it maybe could have been, but we will see.
Yeah, it makes me laugh a bit where they keep talking about smelly waste.
Yeah.
It says the new weekly food waste collections and the proposal to include in guidance an expectation that residual rubbish is collected at least fortnightly, helping avoid long waits for smelly waste to be removed. And you're like, well, yeah, you're right. The smelly waste is in the food waste, and if that's taken away every week, then are you going to need that fortnightly collection of residual waste? Because, as we've already said, 52% of that residual waste with curbside collections is still recycling. So if you take 52% out, in theory, you're not going to have much in your residual bin at all, are you?
Yeah, but the deadlines are quite interesting in it as well, because they're talking 2026, which seems a long way off. But at the moment, most households in England don't have a food waste collection system. So are we going to have capacity with an anaerobic digestion and then vessel composting for actually handling all that material? Where's the funding, or where's the investment going to come for all these facilities that will be required? So and interesting times, I would suggest. So we'll maybe come back to it, or we'll maybe try and find a guest that knows all about this to quiz. We maybe need to get Simon Glenn back on. That's maybe what we need to do, rather than make him write a blog.
Yeah, that's right. We'll do a special.
Anyway, that's probably there is lots more news, but we thought that was plenty for this week. As always, we'll share these links on the website, on the show notes. But a little bit of quick Albion news before we go.
Yeah, I think we were we were trying to get out a newsletter. You know, when I wasn't here, you promised a newsletter, didn't you, Alistair?
We did.
Yes, but apparently there's been a few technical issues with this.
We've
So
failed. Yeah.
yes, so you know, we're getting there, but the show notes will still be posted with the podcast, and so all the information is still there. But hopefully we'll get our newsletter out as soon as we can.
It will be with a few technical teething issues with the formatting of the said newsletter, but we will get it out. We will.
Yeah, and I understand, Alistair, that you were filmed the other week.
Oh dear.
And you were off down to Cardiff. What was all that about?
I was off down to Cardiff for the National KTP Awards, which is the Knowledge Transfer Partnerships. Have I got that right?
Yeah.
That's right. Sorry, I've had a blank there. Which we recently completed a KTP with University of Scotland. If you don't know what KTPs are, again, we'll put a link up to, in fact, we might link to the UWS, because they just shared a big report actually, so I'll share that link. So it was the National Awards. We'd been nominated for the project, the KTP, Heather Beattie, who's previous co-host, for the best management KTP, so that was top 3 in the UK. Sadly, we were not nominated as number 1, but really interesting event in terms of all the diversity of KTPs across the UK. And the big mistake I made was a few months ago I'd gone for some filming so they could show a little film at the award ceremony, and I managed to go for my filming and to Cardiff with the same shirt on.
Well, so, you think you could afford a new shirt, Alistair, for goodness sake.
A note for self is take a note of what shirt you're wearing when you're getting filmed before you go to the next event. So that was as exciting as it got, really. So no, it was a good event. It's a good event, and I enjoyed it. So and what else? Oh, and rubbish talk news, exciting. We are going to go, or we've been asked to go live later in December. We're still discussing with our agents whether we should be going live or not, but we're talking about going live. So I'm not going to give more detail. Maybe next podcast we'll give more detail about that one. But so that'll be exciting. And apart from that, I think that's us. Apart from introduction to Colin Forshaw. So as I said, Colin, production manager up at SUEZ in Aberdeen. And he's going to chat all things material recycling, recovery and reuse. So over to Colin.
Hi Colin, nice to meet you. Nice to chat online and hear all about your experiences in the waste industry. We're going to quiz you and get all your inside thoughts. So first thing is, can you tell us a bit about who you work for and what your role is in that, just to get us sort of a bit of a background on where you're coming from?
Certainly can, Jane. And firstly, let me apologise. I've got a croaky voice, a bit of touch of the man flu. So if I do go a bit squeaky, I'm sure you can deal with that. So I work for SUEZ Recycling Recovery UK Limited. I'm a production operations manager based in Aberdeen. SUEZ itself, it's one of the largest recycling companies in the UK. I'll get the company plug out of the way, but we do have a very large amount of 5,700 employees, £1 billion turnover, and we handle significant volumes of tonnage, recycling, energy waste facilities, these sorts of things. Where I fit in that grand machine is I'm responsible for the Aberdeen City Council contract, which is a long-term contract signed in 2000. I think Alistair was still in shorts back in those days. And will run until 2029. So I've been up here since 2007, and I've seen a lot of change, and that's brought with its own opportunities. I'm sure we'll touch upon that. But I've got operational, safety, compliance, financial responsibility for the operation of the contract and all the facilities to support our clients, which is principally Aberdeen City Council, but other local authorities as well. So there's a lot involved in my role, and I think that's some of the benefits of it as well.
So what are the facilities that you're operating, Colin? What type of facilities are they? that you're
We've got
involved with?
recycling centres, so household waste recycling centres of varying degrees of states of infrastructure, because some were built in the 80s and some were built, fairly recently, 10 years old. So they've got different aspects of that. But we've got 4 of those that are open to members of the public to deposit waste and recycling in. We've got transfer sheds, so these are bulking up points where we bring in materials and bulk up to send onwards for further reprocessing. And we had, until July last year, we had a very large recycling facility which took in dry mixed recycling, so containers and packaging that we then sorted out and processed for right across the northeast of Scotland. And unfortunately, it sustained a fairly significant fire, and I'm sure that was touched upon by one of your previous guests and was in the news as well in July 2022. So pretty much my job for the last 12 months, even more so, that has been about the recovery, the contingency, how we keep providing a service to the householders of Aberdeen City Council and work to rebuild the recycling centre as well. So again, a lot involved in there.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because we had that chat with Pam Walker on the last podcast, who was talking about the fire that you had. It must have been quite difficult there as well, trying to, I suppose you've kind of developed and come through, and the contingency arrangements were quite important. So I suppose from a company point of view, having all the processes and procedures in place was really important. But when we were talking to Pam, she was talking about potential why that happened. And I know we've been banging on about batteries and why people shouldn't put batteries in the waste and all this sort of stuff, and even worse, on our rant about vapes. So I mean, there's I suppose there's a potential there that's something that potentially caused that fire. Is that right, Colin?
Yeah, SUEZ, in partnership with Aberdeen City Council, we were keen to put out the video, and I think you made reference to that, which shows you how quickly this fire spread. It was highly probable. It was a lithium battery device that initially started the fire. I can clarify that we had fire detection, thermal detection systems in place. The fire sprinkling system was installed. It worked. It did what it was designed to do, which was to make sure that people were able to exit the building, the facility safely. It's to prevent loss of life, and that's what it did, and it worked very effectively. But from the video, and I urge everybody to have a look at it, you see the sheer speed at which the fire spreads. And that is the bit that we're now seeing within the industry, the dangers of lithium batteries and vapes, as you say. But it's down to the wrong materials going into the wrong waste stream, and as they become energized in terms of the batteries themselves, or we're separating out, we're doing different things, we're processing materials, we're injecting all these new hazards into there, and it does show that the system as a whole is very sensitive to these sorts of challenges. And I'm talking about the system from Alistair as a householder putting something into his bin, waving goodbye to it on a Tuesday morning, through to it suddenly arriving through several weeks later on in a processing facility, be turned back into new product. It's a process flow, and we need to get our heads around that as a sector, because there's challenges in there about making sure that materials presented correctly for processing and done correctly and efficiently. But there's also opportunities. Again, I'm keen to talk about some of the training and development opportunities within the sector. I think this sector is fantastic. I really do. And the ability for us to tap into new skills, new training, new development and innovation is absolutely the forefront of what we can do. So there's a lot we can learn from these incidents. You mentioned about some of the problems we had on the ground. It's not an experience I would want to go through again, far from it. It's incredibly, it impacts a lot of what we do on a daily basis, but you have to learn the lessons, and then you have to, and I refuse to use the phrase build back better, because I believe a fairly famous politician used that quite a lot, but you have to learn from your mistakes, and you have to use these opportunities to then look at, well, what can we improve? And it might be operational, it might be compliance, it might be safety. You've got to learn from where things can be improved. And I think, again, that's what this sector is fantastic at doing.
I think you're right. I think I was just going to say, Alistair, the video was amazing. It really did show what could happen. And I suppose, again, it's getting that message out to people, isn't it? Make sure you put the right things in the right bins. And our waste composition analysis that we do on a regular basis for quite a number of councils does demonstrate that there's still the wrong things are in the wrong bins, but you know, it's getting that message out really. But it's good that, I mean, the thing is, these things can be recycled and can be recovered. It's not like they are waste and as such. So that's the opportunity we're looking for as well.
Yes, and I listened to some of your previous episodes, and I thought some of them pick up this issue around awareness and education and needs for comms. And I agree with all the points you made. I think some of your previous guests have made that point a lot more succinctly and better than I ever could. But I'd always draw in a point and say, fundamentally, there's a responsibility in there somewhere, though. And and I think people are too quick to say, well, I'll put it in our bin. That's me done. And I would argue, Toss, that's not. We have to get to the point where people take responsibility for what they do. And I think that there's a disconnect that's crept in over the last 10 to 20 years in that front.
I think we've got a bit of a perfect storm as well with, in the past it was batteries. We had batteries and we put them, people put them in the bin. Now we've got batteries. Now we've got vapes. Now we've got rechargeable batteries for lawnmowers. Now we've got, earpods that have got batteries. Got so many different things that have got batteries with them in them and potentially an ignition source. That we've got a bit of a perfect storm going on. That if people don't put them in the right place, there's a real issue. We'll share the video. If people haven't seen the video, we'll share it again because it is. I'd seen it before, but I rewatched it after we interviewed Pam, and it's just the speed of the fire was just incredible. How quickly it took hold was quite frightening.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be good to help the message get across. And I think the final thing I'd add to that was lots of nuance. And I know, Alistair, you attended a dinner the other week where I think you were sat next to an engineer who said, "Well, just goes to the same place anyway. Well, what's the point?"
Exactly. And I was like,
now before you get back on that particular soapbox, and I fully agree with what you said, by the way, my soapbox that I had all the time is people think recycling facilities, and when we start talking about machinery doing the job and conveyors, and they think, well, there'll be a magic robot that just pulls material out. No, it doesn't matter how many different machines, optical sorters, fantastic bits of technology that we use to help recycling. Fundamentally, there'd be a man involved in that process somewhere along the lines, and that's where I think people forget as well. They just assume, well, they never think of the human element. And I think I'd love to get that message back out across to members of the public as well. Think of the guys that actually work in these facilities. We have to be looking after them, and it's your responsibility. Going back to it, take the responsibility to then put that in the right container. We're not asking for a great deal of effort from people, I think.
Absolutely. And just going back a little bit, Colin, how did you get into the world of waste management?
Preparing for this, I had to go back quite some time, back to the mid-90s of all things.
You're not that old, Colin.
Do you know what? Thank you. That's very kind of you to say so. I'm feeling it today. I was attending Sunderland Polytechnic, so that gives you an idea of how old it was. It's now Sunderland University, and a fine institution, I would add. At the time, I was doing an environmental sciences course. And I got to year 3, or the end of year 2 as well. I was frankly bored of academia. I was never going to be clever. I'm never the cleverest person, and I accepted that. And the opportunity came for me to do an industrial placement down in Ipswich, of all places. Couldn't even pick out Ipswich in a map at the time, but I thought, I'm going to do that because it's a year out away from studying. It's a chance to work. Let's see what it is. And it was working for the council to support their rollout of garden waste services. They would just started operating a brand new in-vessel composting system, which was combining garden waste collections with sewage sludge to produce a soil conditioner. So they needed a DOM student who didn't really know too much about anything to come down and help them roll it out. And it was good timing. I spent a fantastic year in there learning everything about the industry. And then that energized me to come back because I saw opportunities. And I did my final year placement almost exclusively on all things waste management, ranging from landfill gas generation through to communications, through to operations, through to the environmental benefits of doing this. So circa 98, 97, I mean, I'm showing my age, is when I graduated, and I knew I wanted, because that leads to the next question I always ask, did you fall into waste? Kind of yes at that point. But from
I'm really glad to hear that, Colin, because there's not very many of us.
I wanted
a lot
to
of
do
people
it.
said they kind of like came in by mistake, but I also, when I did my geology degree, my dissertation was on landfill and stuff like that, and that's what got me into to waste. And it's nice to hear that there's somebody else. Mind you, I graduated a lot earlier than you, Colin, so I don't want to worry about your age.
Surely not.
But that's kind of I'm pleased about that.
Even at that age, very early 20s, I could see that there was so much scope for different things in terms of different aspects of the industry to get into. So I was very keen to do it, and I know with great interest. Again, I'm plugging your show on that, Alistair, about waste composition. Yeah, that is a rite of passage. I agree with that, and that was my first project after graduating. Graduated on the Wednesday, started working with another local authority in the northeast of England on the Monday to do some low level waste composition. So I was very lucky in that respect to fall into the industry almost immediately after graduation. But I do believe you create your luck, you work hard, and you spy the opportunities, and that led to just keeping working in projects and composition. And I was eventually able to join Shanks, as it were, Waste Management. They had a graduate placement scheme in 2000 in Scotland. Now, I was vaguely aware of Scotland. I believe it was north of Berwick, and that was about as far as I knew it. So I remember getting off the train in Airdrie, of all places,
on a cold.
Yeah. They just said, you're going to Airdrie to start your placement in November, and I went, oh, that sounds lovely.
So was that the Karen Bro office then? At the side of the motorway?
Coatbridge.
The Coatbridge, the one at Karen Bro at Coatbridge.
Yeah. It's back in the day. Yeah. So I was based out of that, and I mean, that was a fantastic way to really get into the industry. The first 12 months, you had a program where you spent 3 months in different parts of the business. So the first 3 months was sales. The next 3 months was working at their recycling services. Then there was the landfill element, and it was the landfill element I really took a liking to. And I spent a good 3-4 years, eventually getting a full-time position with Shanks in the landfill division. So that was really good. Taught me a lot. I worked at Greengaze. I think, again, rite of passage. I don't know many people in Scotland that's been involved in the landfill that's not been across Greengaze at some point in time.
Greengaze was certainly a learning ground for lots of people, both managers and regulators, and
absolutely.
So I would say possibly there was lots of mistakes made. Whether people learn from them is a different matter. But moving on.
So it's these sorts of again, harping on, but I think you have to try and use those experiences. I had a bit of a change then. Again, I was made redundant in 2005 as part of the WRG buyout from Shanks, and that effectively was the game changer. That was a catalyst for a change in my career and the way I approach things, because I had become a bit too focused on landfill. It was quite niche at that point in time. We could see things were changing, but I hadn't really done anything else for a number of years, and I was getting a bit pigeonholed, I felt. So you took that opportunity, and I went to join a company at the time called SETA, now SUEZ, down in the northeast of England. And I was happy to admit, Alistair, and I've said this to my current line management team, I blagged it a bit. They said, what's your experience of operating household waste recycling centres? Oh, plenty of experience, thanks very much. I mean, I might have used one in the past, but so they were either desperate or they saw the potential. Let's say they saw the potential, and they took me on to manage transfer stations and landfill in a household waste recycling contract down in Newcastle. And at some point in time, I was commuting between my home. I was still living in Motherwell, commuting down to Newcastle backwards and forwards every week. I'm sure we've all done that. You can do it when you're young and dumb, but eventually you get to the point where you think, yeah, it would be nice to see my wife every now and again. And we were given the opportunity to come up to Aberdeen in 2007 for SUEZ to look after the Aberdeen contract. So we moved up here lock, stock and barrel, and we've been here since. So that's a potted history of my career.
That's good.
Hard work and riding your luck, I think, is probably the best way of putting it.
Yeah, it's interesting, Colin, because back in what you're saying, the late 1990s, early 2000 was really, the heyday of landfill, wasn't it? That 95% of waste was going to landfill. There was literally no recycling. So you've been through similar changes probably that myself and Jane have been through in terms of the sector. Any sort of favourite roles, projects that stand out, or any you think, oh, I'm glad that never happens again?
Do you know,
you can give me both if you want.
Apart from the fire, obviously.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna. Yes, I said to myself right at the start of this conversation, if you recall, I'm going to be positive. No, things have changed. I've been involved in so many different projects, and taking this particular contract with Aberdeen City Council was very heavily organised around landfill when I took it on in 2007, and our landfill capacity. That particular landfill closed in 2011. So we were building facilities, transfer operations, the design and build of Alton's original plant, the Alton's East Mark 1, as I like to call it now. That was a fantastic project. I'm not aware of any other scale of development at that period of time. And again, training development, working for a company like SUEZ, you have the ability to get involved in different projects and learn new skills. And they took somebody like me who has very operational background, and all of a sudden I'm getting involved in production, and I'm getting involved in planning, and I'm getting involved in the design of facilities and using different tools and techniques and waste modeling. It's starting to draw together all these skills. I always use that as a fantastic project. We took a green field and we had a facility which was producing 130,000 tons of product within the space of 2 or 3 years. And anybody that's been lucky enough to be involved in those sorts of projects, absolutely. That's a favourite.
So what would you class as your product from that then, Colin? When you're talking about product, what would you class as your product?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I haven't hit the acronym alarm buzzer that Alistair has set.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, but I nearly got there with product. So from my point of view, and it shows how I've had to change my way of thinking, and I think the sector has changed as well. We do talk about products. We bring materials in. I've got a handy prop here, if I may. There you go. There's my bottle of healthy spring water, no brand name mentioned. So that bottle, once I finish drinking it, is going to become a waste product. Now, sorry, a waste material. We want to put that in the bin. We want to then send that to a facility to then be sorted into a grade of material, which we can then sell on to be turned back into hopefully another bottle. Well, once we start looking at our facilities as conduits to produce a material as a product, and we're part of a product flow, a product chain, it changes the way you think about things. So when I say product in terms of Alton's East recycling facility, then it would relate to, we would bring in 50,000 tons of mixed materials of packaging of all various different types of guises, and we would produce at least 14 different grades of material every single shift, ranging from PET bottles to HDPE bottles, fiber, card, glass material, and we'd have to produce that to a specification to make it suitable to then move on to the next chain. So we had a lot of machinery to help us do that. We had to understand how the plant worked and how the material flows through the facilities as well. And so product does that. I think you have to think about those terms. I've gone slightly off tangent there, Jane, to come back to what I think is product. But in effect, if you start looking at receiving a material, how you can add value to it, and then move it on to the next step of the chain, and then that's what your product is. Now, the specification will change, of course it will, depending on what the next stage is. But using terminology like specification on recycling, or specification for a fuel if you're making a fuel, or even if you're just putting material into a skip at a recycling centre, then take to a transfer shed. Well, you want to minimise how much, and I couldn't help myself, Alistair, contamination gets in there, could you? So that for me is how we have to look at these terms. That's the sort of language we have to use nowadays in terms of our sector, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I generally think that's a fantastic change to change our mentality.
Yeah, and I suppose what you're looking is you're bringing in sort of curbside recycling, and then you're taking that and that whatever's in there, you're separating all that out. So you've got, you know, your plastic bales, your plastic bottles are all baled up and then sent off for recycling or recovery, I suppose. And then we're classing that as a product because actually somebody's going to do something with it because it's all been segregated properly.
Yeah, and it changes the idea away from whatever goes into any bin is waste. And it moves us away slightly from recycling as a sort of catch-all term as well, because recycling means a lot of things to a lot of people. And all right, let's tease a little bit into the acronyms. You know, you could argue that the worst thing that ever happened in our industry is that we called a materials recycling facility. They're advanced logistics depots. They are bulking stations. We are splitting out materials and then moving them on. And there is nothing wrong with that. And it's a key part of the product flow. But immediately it set the wrong example, or sorry, the wrong concept and picture in people's heads when they attend one of these sites. No, they sit there and go, right, well, you bring in plastic bottles and where do you then make them into new bottles? Oh, we don't. We do that 150 miles down the road. Well, why do you do that? So we need to think about the language that we use to help raise awareness, to help educate members of the public, to help educate legislators and policymakers as well, because they suffer the same issue.
Yeah. And I suppose that's the other thing, isn't it? It's taking those like you say, taking those plastic bottles or paper or whatever. And again, it's that proximity principle. Where can we take it? Can we actually get it recycled or processed locally, or does it have to go 200, 300, 400 miles? And I think that's what we're, to some extent, what we're lacking in Scotland is the ability to process this waste or this product.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. And I have my soapbox, and I'm going to just keep it slightly under the table. But infrastructure for me is part of the problem. And infrastructure cannot just mean one part of that process flow. Infrastructure cannot just apply to collecting material. It needs to apply to sorting, to segregation, to move to the logistics element, so then to the reprocessing. And until we start thinking holistically about these sorts of issues, then we're in danger of repeating the same mistakes we have, in my personal opinion, made the last 20 plus years in Scotland. And I think, and I'm going to come back full circle here because you asked about two of my positive projects. So we talked about all, but the next one is reuse that we've just introduced, and that picks up your theme there, Jane, about local facilities. We have a House of Waste Recycling Centre. We introduced a reuse shop. We had a reuse service in there for a period of time, but the reuse shop is aimed at providing materials that were brought in specifically to recycle or to dispose of. We segregate them and then we sell them back to the local community or people that want to come in and buy them. And where I'm linking the two discussion points there we've just had, we've got a key point about local infrastructure. It doesn't take a large amount of infrastructure, but local people can straight away see the value and benefit of that, of these sorts of small scale services. And they are providing a need, or certainly they're providing a service to people that want to go to sites as well, to look at materials. How many times have you looked at somebody throwing stuff into a skip next to you and you think, well, why are you throwing that away? Jesus, that's perfectly useful. Yeah. And I'll add as an aside, by the way, that I have made great use of this service as a customer, I should add. I do pay, but my eldest is into, he's starting to get into sort of crafting woodwork. He's at an age now where he's taken an interest in this. And I've bought him some hand tools and miter saws, all secondhand. Absolutely nothing wrong with these things. Bit of a clean up, jobs are good, and you are getting these tools which are getting invested in new life. And I am hoping that eventually he's going to get the point where he can build me a new house when I retire. But
that's fantastic.
I'm playing the long ball game.
I just think that is because I've been doing quite a bit of looking at training for the modern apprentices on household waste recycling sites, and you're sitting there thinking, why are you throwing all those things away? But we used to have, because I used to work for Shropshire County Council a long time ago, and it was late 80s, and they had totters, they called them totters on the site, and they actually, they had a license and everything like that, so they had the license and they had to pay for it to be able to, take things out of the skip. Well, I don't know whether they took them out of the skips, but take things out, and they had metals, they could sell those on, and all similar to what your reuse, but yours is obviously slightly more high level than the Tutter's hut with his with his little skip next to it. But and then it all stopped, and now it's really important that we can actually reuse what people are throwing away, because it's just such a waste.
I think it's a necessary part of where we need to move things away up the waste hierarchy. We there's an acronym for it, but we see. I think you were talking about pumpkins, weren't you? But yes, if you don't want to create a waste, don't buy it in the first place. And okay, what's the next one? Well, let's buy that material, let's buy that product, before it's thrown into the skip. So we are moving away from the recycling. It's an absolutely critical one. For me as a project, and I am on the record of saying this, I could not for the life of me see a benefit of a reuse service on my sites. Just couldn't get that. I couldn't get the concept around it. That was the problem. We do it internally. We do it within SUEZ. We know that these systems exist within. About 3 years ago, I was tasked with going to set one up, and I just needed to go and see a scheme. So I went down to some of our sister sites where we operate in Surrey, and I remember on the flight down there to Surrey, having a chat with the operational guy I was standing next to, thinking, well, where's the benefit in this? And then within a space of 10 minutes, I'm seeing the materials coming out the backs of cars, being then segregated, sorted. I'm seeing the guys then sell them to members of the public. I'm looking at the number of items that have been reused and sold. I'm looking at the types of items as well. Some of these are quite damaging. We pat testing that's taking place, so you're making sure these things are safe to sell on, and they're pulling in all different types of materials. And again, on the flight back from that single day visit, we were so enthused. We thought, this is just brilliant. We need to do this. And so we've gone for Aberdeen. We and I should add that this site is the purpose of these operations are to work alongside existing systems. These are materials that people bring to us wanting to recycle, not to donate. There's a clear distinction there. We need to make sure that we understand that. But we've diverted over 21,000 individual items just this year through one site, through one scheme. It's about 65 to 70 tons worth of material. So the tonnage isn't massive, but the actual impact on social value is significant. And you think about the environmental benefits as well from that relatively small tonnage can be significant. So I see a massive future for these sorts of schemes, working in partnerships and collaborations with other organisations, other bits of sectors. And that's going to be a critical area for where I think we need to move, not just as Scotland, not just as northeast of Scotland, but as a UK wide. We really need to get into these sorts of services and change the way we think. And again, going back to how, I always bring it back to I feel a bit of a dinosaur at times. Usually when I wake up in the morning and start groaning, putting my shoes on, I'm telling them I'm getting old a bit. But that for me is where this sector is fantastic. You can take somebody who's been around the block a lot, and there's always something new to learn. And this is why I'm quite enthused about reuse at the minute. I think there's a really good area for growth and development here, for a lot of new talent coming in, a lot of new services, a lot of new ways of thinking, where we can start linking in different sectors as well. So yeah, definitely a space to work.
That sounds really interesting. I'm going to go, we're going to change the sort of direction of the questions and make them a bit more about you, Colin. So in terms of your sort of what you've done, you've obviously taken sort of waste into your heart. So I'm assuming that when you go home, you've got all your nice clean recycling bins there, and when you go to other people's houses, you're a bit of a bin police like me. But I just, wondered if your habits, and I think from what you've said with all the tools and everything, I think you're kind of living your work to some extent as well. Is that would you say that's correct, or you go home and you're like, nah, don't put that in that bin, it's fine?
I'm amazed I'm not divorced, but yes, I do police things in the house. 2 children, and they're at that age where they're at the age where I love them to bits, but they're getting to the point where you can't tell me what to do. So I'm having to constantly run around and rinse yogurt pots out and these sorts of things. But yeah, I think you can't work in any industry and not sort of absorb either through osmosis or conscious effort any change. And certainly when you see what we see in the sector constantly every single day, the amount of waste and the types of materials being disposed of in whatever guise, it doesn't matter whereabouts you work in the sector, when you see it, you start to, you feel you have to live and breathe it. The one thing I always tickle on is, though, little changes. I think when I was youngest, I really do sound like a middle-aged now, but when 20 years ago, I'd probably try and change the world in a single morning and then be upset because I hadn't done it by 11 o'clock. But now I'm a bit more mature and a bit more laid back and probably just a bit more haggard. I'm thinking, well, let's just do small steps every day. And so, yeah, the example you used there about buying some tools from reuse happens. But we also, the youngest is 10, and recently he happened to be in the car on a Saturday when I was doing a site visit to the reuse. He loves the reuse. It's fantastic. And we spent an hour setting up a shelf for Christmas decorations, because we've got Christmas decorations and Christmas trees, and they're doing the ladies in the shop were setting up the Christmas shelf ready to do a bit of promotional sale. And he loved that. He was, honestly, the stuff he put out there, just dressed it all up ready for sale, and it's sold within a few hours. And he's enthused in these sorts of things, always loves a bargain. You haven't got time to hear the story about the yoga mat, but that was a case in point where he wanted the yoga mat, walked in there within 5 seconds, suddenly appeared with a brand new yoga mat, fully wrapped, managed to get that for £2. So he is a reuse champion in the making, I think, definitely. So again, going back to the question, do you live and breathe it? I think you have to, but not over bore people. Yeah, I'll try and keep the soapbox under the table as much as I can, but yeah, don't invite me to it. Don't get a couple of drinks into me and then start asking me questions about recycling. Otherwise, you might be there for a while.
It all goes in the same place, Colin. We don't need to worry about anything. That's the normal one that gets me going.
yeah, you're right there, Alistair. That's when the sleeves get rolled up and you think, right.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I would totally agree with that.
I think it's fascinating. I think that listen to talk about the thinking of material as a flow of material. I don't think there's enough thought put into that. I don't think people understand the size and scale and tonnage that goes through these facilities. Just the sheer quantity of material that goes through these facilities, and I don't think they realise how hard the public make it for operations like yourself by being really, call it careless or call it not caring what goes in the right bin, but they make the job doubly as hard. If you were getting dry mixed recyclate that was the proper materials and not 20% contaminated, your job would be a lot easier, and you would be able to charge Aberdeen City Council a lot less money.
Oh, well, easy, Tiger. We've got to make a profit somewhere. But yeah, yeah. Just in case Pam's listening. But no, you're absolutely right, and it's terminology like contamination and non-target materials and target materials, and these, I think sometimes we get caught between trying to change our sector into a production focused or process focused sector, and the waste and recycling sector, and that can be a challenge for us. We used to hold, we had a visitor centre designed as part of the plant, and we would alternate. We'd bring in sort of school groups, community groups on one week, and then more wider public the next week, and then the third week we'd have off so we could do some training. But almost always it was good way of educating people so they could see the plant. We'd walk them around, and they were always blown away. We used to walk into the top level facility and they'd open the door and they go, blimey, and because it looks on the outside just a massive building. But as soon as you go in, you've got 115 conveyors machines moving material all over the place. And they'd sit there and go, the scale of this operation is mind-blowing. And you'd sit there and go, yeah. And two things, massive amount of pride in that. You took a massive amount of pride of showing people around your facility, showing the guys. The guys took a lot of pride in it as well, about how they work. And the other thing is they took pride in showing the public and giving them this bit of awareness. And I think, some of the questions might be about me. Why do I still work in this industry after all these many years? Well, that's why you've got to take pride in what we do, and I do take pride in what we do. I take pride in the facilities we run. I take pride in the public services that we offer. But fundamentally, I take immense pride in the people I work with as well. I think they do a cracking job. And one thing I'd probably change: I don't think we get enough recognition as a sector. And you know, I will have my soapbox moment. How many times do the public put the stuff in the bin, wave goodbye to it on a Tuesday morning, and it just disappears? I call it the black box syndrome. It just goes to the big black box. We don't know where it goes to. We don't care. It goes to a black box, and it's turned into pixie dust and unicorn horns. Now, we've got to get out there and show people what's involved and get them to start thinking about these process flows and these productions. Because if we don't, they're never going to grasp the changes that they need to introduce to their own lives to help us to help them.
We're trying our best with these podcasts, Colin. I call it the bin fairy. The magic bin fairy comes along the street and takes the waste away, and it disappears. Yeah.
Well, if you came round as looking like a fairy, Alistair, something wrong with your fancy dress, I tell you. But you're right. It is that sort of concept, isn't it? It just disappears. It's the best thing we do as a sector, and it's also the worst thing we do as a sector as well, isn't it? It's a challenge for us, just kind of squaring up those aspects of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. How do you busy life? How do you relax? How do you get away from the day job?
Yeah. Well, I'd love to say something really exciting. You know, I go abseiling and parachuting and all the rest of it, but I don't. Look, I'm middle aged now. I make noises, put my shoes on, as I keep on saying, and I've been groaning, getting out of bed. I've got two young boys, 12 and 10. They're into all manner of sports, so I spend a lot of time taxiing them around.
Dad's taxi.
Yeah, and you know what? I love it. One of them's, the eldest, is into rugby right now, so I've seen a lot of Aberdeenshire driving around various rugby parts. So the other one's into taekwondo. One of these days I might have to learn Korean to try and help him get through his grades. I go to the gym. As you can see, it's clearly paying off. I'm ripped. I go to the gym just enough to make sure I can still eat Kit Kats at the weekend, and that's my purpose in life. I'll do a side anecdote to that one. Is I am trying to train a bit and get a bit fitter for a competition, and when you look at the bandings now, I'm now in the veteran category. I've gone through seniors.
You've got a chance now, Colin. Come on.
So what is it? Running, Colin? Walking, cycling, swimming?
No, it's mainly CrossFit. So I used to play a lot of football and do a lot of activities like that, but I'm seizing up and can no longer do that. So I don't leap like a salmon I used to. So the CrossFit side, I fell into it, and I really enjoy it, but I can be quite boring at that. Coming in and telling somebody that I've just managed to up my personal best by 0.5 kilograms on a bench press, for example, and you can see the guys just sit there and roll their eyes. But no, I do like it.
As bad as my running stories, Colin. That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, or as bad as my cycling stories.
But it gives you, it gives us, an hour off. It just recharges the batteries, physical exertion, whatever it is. I like to get out and about. We've got a dog as well. We bought a collie. He's fantastic. Just getting out. I mean, Aberdeenshire is just the most wonderful part of the world to live in, and it really is truly a beautiful place. And getting out and exploring that with the dog and with the families is fantastic. So yeah, look, I don't do the abseiling and the exciting, sexy stuff. I don't think you need to. I've got more than enough on my plate, and I really enjoy it.
Well, we have had a wee trend of profile pictures of the guest and their pets. So if you want to share, if you want to share an appropriate photo, we're happy to share that one.
Yeah,
I didn't have a pet. I was with my bike, I think. Yeah, that's my pet bike.
Oh, we've had all sorts. I think we had. Did we have a canal boat? I can't remember if we got a canal boat.
We did.
Yeah, we had a canal boat. So there we go. Anyway, in terms of your career, what's next? What's the big any big new things in the horizon?
No big changes. What my personal intention is to get Bolton's back operational again. Get this facility rebuilt, and that's a big challenge. We are 18 months, coming up to 18 months or so into the project. We'll be at it for another 12 to 14 months. And then when that is operational, is to get it in what I call steady state operation. commission a facility, you switch it on, it breaks down, you switch it on, it breaks down, it runs for a couple of days, it breaks down, and that's normal process, absolutely no problem with that. Getting into a steady state of operation is critical, because then you understand the plant, the process, and how these things function. You've got a working team, and that's the bit of life I really enjoy around these sorts of projects. Once I get to that steady state, then do you know what? Let's have a look at that future personal development and career developments for me. But within that, there's a lot of training involved and a lot of personal development. That'll have to happen. I mean, the training courses that SUEZ do put me on is fantastic. They do give a lot of training support, and we've been known to use you guys as well for some of the training. I think that's fantastic that we do that, and we've got the support of a major company that does develop its staff. So staying in this role for another couple of years is absolutely not a bad thing, because you can develop and learn so much in that space and time, and you've got the support of a good organization that's going to use those skills as well.
Out of interest, did you manage to retain, what happened to the staff that were working in the facility and in the fire? Have you retained most of these staff? Or
yeah, we were very keen as a business. We were very keen to make sure that we retained as many people as we could. So we have what we call contingency operations, because we're still handling the material. We're just not putting it through the plant, and we're relying on the existing facilities, the other facilities, to work harder. So that means we had the ability to keep people on, and also the demolition, the rebuild project meant that we've kept a core team of people involved as well. So we've been lucky in that respect, and I do have a lot of experience around me. And I also, I learned the hard way around. So I always go back. We took a field and turned it into a processing facility in a very short space in time, and we had to learn on the go. This time round, I'm hoping, because we've been retaining this expertise, that we should be a bit ahead of the game. But it means that we can, again, learn from the mistakes. What did we do right? Excellent, let's do that better. What did we do wrong? Right, let's not do that again. Let's do that differently. And there's probably a core of about 16 people distributed around my contract, including myself in there, that worked at the facility in different guises, from technical, operational, compliance sort of side of things, safety. That means we've got that experience to fall back and rely upon. So we're lucky in that respect. In terms of the retention, yes, that was good.
Yeah, sounds good. You've done quite a lot in your career. You've kind of changed from your landfill to your reuse to your waste recycling centres to all this sort of quite a wide variation in what you've done in the waste industry. So is there one fact from all of that you think people may not know and that they should know? Kind of, like this is your fact, this is the one thing everybody should know.
Do you know what, Jay? Not one fact, because, and I've listened to some of your previous guests, they are much more eloquent than I can ever be, and better at doing facts. What I would say is less of a fact and more of a mindset. Let's start saying how rather than why. That's something we brought in. I personally have used that since the last 10-15 years in this role. The challenges that I get coming across my desk in terms of change in policy and change of services and change of all the day-to-day stuff we deal with as an operational manager is, well, you need to do this. Instead of saying why, I think it's a relevant question, but let's say how first off. Well, how would we do that? Because if you start asking how, the why does fall out the back of it, because you'll start identifying issues. And I think, so it's less of a fact and doesn't directly answer your question, but I think that's an important mindset to have, and it will help change what we need to change the little steps.
I think that's important, unless you live kind of around my way here, where how and why are interchangeable. And it's like, do you mean how or do you mean why?
Yeah.
It's like,
that's just West Coast of Scotland.
It's a West Coast of Scotland thing. I just remember my kids coming in and I'm saying like, right, let's go here. And I was like, why? Or how? Well, we're going to go in the car, so it's, anyway, I know exactly what you mean.
Cultural differences in the language. I love that. I mean, I've been around bits of Scotland all over the place, and I love the different approaches to life. I love the different dialects.
Oh, you've got quite a lot of dialect up Aberdeen, and then further up the coast to Peterhead. That was my first exposure to. I think I've probably talked about in my previous podcast was for Shanks and McEwen, I covered from North Wales through Liverpool, Central Scotland, Aberdeen, Peterhead, and Alness up at north of Inverness, and the different dialects. I remember going out there as a probably 22-year-old, and I was like, "What is that man saying?" Particularly Peterhead. What is that man saying to me? I have no clue. And
that was my experience. We went to work for a landfill site at Banff. And there was me, and I'd not long been in Scotland, and there was this other girl who was from Birmingham, and we both went up there. Fortunately, we had a translator with us, the guy who had, lived in Aberdeenshire, so he came up with us as well. And basically, it was just as well because we had a clue. We hadn't been saying anything, but we got it sorted.
You get there. There you go. So one habit or change that you would like the public to know, Colin, that would help either your role or your company's role in what you're doing?
I'm going to be slightly cheeky, if I may, and say there's probably two changes of habits. So the first one,
we'll let you have two.
Oh, that's very kind of you. Well, listen, ask yourself: do I need it? Do I need to buy it? Do I need to get it? Do I need it in the first place? Whatever it is, do I need it? I'm thinking that perhaps is, can I do something else with it? And the next thing is, think about what is going in your, does this have to go in this particular bin or container? And that linked back to this battery issue, which is, no pun intended, a hot topic. Clearly, we've got to get our heads around this battery issue and getting these materials into segregate correctly, segregate safely, and not having an impact on our facility. So first thing, change a habit. Ask yourself the question: do I need it? Second thing, is this the right place to put it? There you go. It's short and snappy. You can have those ones for free.
Good. No, that's perfect. That's magic. So you've actually managed quite well to avoid using too many acronyms, and I think most of them were ones that people were hopefully aware of. So I never felt the need to pull you up. But a favourite one, or a favourite bit of jargon or acronym that you either like or hate.
Oh, I've got an absolute doozy for you guys, and it was on the back of recent changes around POPs. So I listened. You're quite right, POPs and woods. Well, we've had to extend that as well. So we now, in a conversation or a discussion I had with my team yesterday, the phrase crept in was, "Does this POPs woods meet whack?" Right? and we had to stop there and all look at each other and bear in mind how long I've been in the industry, and I'm sitting with people that have been here 5-10 years as well, and we went, well, hang on, we don't even understand what the hell that sentence means. How's member of the public? So yes, does the POPs meet it? Is there POPs in the waste upholstered domestic seating, and does it meet the waste acceptance criteria for the new energy from waste facility plant round the corner? Well, it's just. So I think I like this part of your podcast, Alistair, because I think it does highlight how we are at times far too insular in our language and using acronyms. So we catch ourselves out on a daily basis.
I think that the WUDS one was the one that got me. It was like I was genuinely, I have no clue what this is, and I had to, go and say. And the SEPA document, I think we mentioned this before. The SEPA document didn't even, put WUDS in full, for the first, when they used it first. It was like, give somebody half a clue. So anyway, next one, we're going to be really brave here and give you a magic wand. What would you love to see changed?
I'm going to finish on a positive. If this is perhaps the last question, listen.
It's the second last, but you're.
Oh well, yeah, all right. I've got space for a negative one. No, on a positive, your demographic for your podcast is becoming younger. I think that's fantastic. So let's reach out to the youngsters out there. That's unfortunately anybody that's probably sub 30, which shows how old I am. But this sector is innovative. It's an interesting career. I think you are, both of you guys are examples where if you're in it for a few years, you can be in it for life if you're prepared to work hard and change. It pulls in so many different skills, capabilities. It offers the chance to to change your career, offers a chance to make meaningful change to society, to what we do, and work towards this global vision of a sustainable future. I would love to see that magic wand. If I could wave it, it would be to, look, guys, make our sector more visible as a career opportunity, as a training development opportunity. That would be the magic one for me, just to get the new blood in.
Yeah, and I suppose that kind of links onto the next one about any advice for anyone wanting to follow a similar career path, and how would they get into it. And you're talking to that graduate who's just graduated, doesn't know what to do, or the person who's just left school. And I think, what advice would you give them?
As graduates, it's difficult. It's difficult to get into these roles, but perhaps a word of advice is, don't necessarily think that your degree will dictate which part of our sector you need to be in. So I'm trying to think of I've got a guy working for me at the minute who's very much a production background, worked on production facilities all his life in every other industry apart from waste and recycling, has joined us now for the last 3 years, and he's training with you guys to get his COTC. He has embraced the sector, and his background is all production management. It isn't waste at all. So we need so many different skills to help us progress. And so as a graduate, come in, maybe take a role that you might be surprised you can do. Get your hands dirty, waste composition, rite of passage, but get your hands dirty, be prepared to work for it, and you will find opportunities. And then once you find those opportunities, go for it a hell of a lever. Use your skills, use your experiences, and start putting these new, fresh, innovative ideas into our sector, and that will drive us forward. That's what will help. So, yeah, I think almost as a word of advice to businesses out there is, let's start ploughing different fields for where we find the talent as well. We need to be a bit more thoughtful about where we bring in people into new roles as well. If I wanted to bring in a recycling supervisor, advertising for a job that says recycling supervisor is very explicit. What kind of skill set do we want in a recycling supervisor is more probably the better way of putting it. And that will twofold, shows people that there are opportunities, and also gives them a chance to come in with new skills. And I think that'll be beneficial as well.
That's a good point, isn't it? Because it's new skill sets and also new ways of thinking and new ways of working, and that gives you new blood into the industry that has looking at things in different ways, which is really important, because sometimes you get stuck in a rut of doing what's always been done.
You've got me jumping with my other hobby horse, Colin, about the training and development, and the role that Switch plays, and sort of try to provide I feel like a structure for the sector, because we are quite poor at, you're probably quite lucky in SUEZ that you've got quite a big corporate organisation behind you that provides the training and development. There's a lot of waste companies or organisations dealing with waste that don't have that expertise. One of the things I was going to add, I thought we might touch it, but we never had to touch it. But and it's a bit of an extra question that you've not been prepared for. What about your role with you were obviously chair of Scotland CWM until this year, I think. How do you think that fits in? How do you think that contributes to the whole discussion?
In terms of development,
just in terms of raising the profile of the sector, developing staff, that type of thing.
I think that I enjoyed that role in many ways. So the Chartered Institute of Waste Management, I got involved in. I mean, I've been a member since 2004, as in a chartered member, but I only become more actively involved 2014, 2015, and I honestly can't give you any technical reason why I didn't for 10 years. Couldn't. I don't know why. Things just happened. But I thought, let's get more involved, and it does expose you to other parts of the business, to other groups, to seeing policy. I think organisations like CLWM, like industry groups, they're important to become involved with, because it's important that we have that holistic view, we have a coordinated effort and discussion. Personally, taking on the vice chair and then the chair of the Scottish Centre was challenging for me. And I'm very confident talking to you guys. Put me in a room full of politicians or other people, and I do go quiet because I'm outside of my comfort zone. My comfort zone is hitting things with a spanner and a big loading shovel. My comfort zone is not trying to sound eloquent and coherent on a lectern. So that's where I personally got a lot of development and perverse joy out of that, because it did teach me a lot about how I can approach things differently. Can we do more? Yes. I think we need to do more. Do we need to be more coordinated? Yes, we do. Can CRWM in Scotland help to do that? Yes, it can. It's pivotal to do that. And it also needs to collaborate, and I know it is collaborating with other industry groups as well, because we have to, as a sector, really start looking at policies, and we have to challenge what is coming out of some of the decision making. I'm lucky because I work for a corporate organization who is very good, very keen to develop people, and it's fantastic. And I recognize that other organizations might have the resources to do that. But if that's the case, then come and speak to organizations like CRWM. Look for mentoring or support. We put together a mentoring scheme in that, and we can get graduates to link in with people like myself who can help direct and shape, and that's a part of. It's a part of what I've done in the last sort of 5-10 years outside of CRWM as well as within CRWM, which I've genuinely enjoyed, is helping bring in new blood, helping develop those new skills and talents, because I will learn stuff out of that as well. I appreciate my degree now was 25 years. God, I really feel
it's more than that, Colin. More than that. I've done the sums.
Yeah. All right. More than 25 years. Easy, Tiger. Things change. So it becomes a two-way process. It gets us as the established operational managers out to learn new ideas, and as well as the other way around. So I think these organisations have a really good place to use for training development, and it's key. And I think pulling it back to personal development, where I'd like to get involved more is possibly in the next few years getting back on that link. You'll understand why in the last 12-18 months it's fallen right off the wayside, but I want to get back in the realms of mentoring people and helping them take over. And then when I retire, because that's still some distance away, honestly, then we're passing on to the next generation, safe hands, and they can make us old silvery people who are sitting in a retirement home saying it all goes to the same place, doesn't it? They can tell us, well, actually, things have moved on.
Yeah. That sounds good. Now we've exhausted our extensive list of questions, Colin. So thank you very much for your sharing your thoughts with us. Very much appreciated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed it, guys, and I think the podcast itself is fantastic, and I think some of the guests that you brought on are really interesting, and I've learned a lot, and these are people that I've worked with for many years as well, so it's been fascinating to listen as well as engage and take part, and I can only hope that I've contributed in some small way to make it enjoyable for them.
You would definitely have. Thank you.
Yeah, and as long as you've as long as you listen to mine, Colin, that's fine. Yeah, thanks very much.
Thanks again.